Hello, I'm James Wells, Education Manager at Crayola. We're excited that Penguin Kids and Penguin Classroom are collaborating with Crayola for this Read Along, Draw Along event to help children enjoy great stories and the illustrations that bring them to life. In honor of Hispanic Heritage Month, we'll be sharing a story that celebrates the love between a father and daughter and of a vibrant immigrant neighborhood. My Papi Has A Motorcycle has earned the Southern California Independent Booksellers Association Award, Pura Belpre Illustration Honor Award, and the Tomas Rivera Mexican American Children's Book Award, among many other recognitions. So get cozy, grab some drawing supplies, and get ready for an interactive story session. I'm thrilled to introduce today's author, Isabel Quintero, and illustrator, Zeke Peña. Welcome, friends.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, Isabel, you are an award-winning author and daughter of Mexican immigrants. Talk to us about your journey of becoming a children's book author and how your Hispanic heritage and growing up in Corona, California influences your writing.
I grew up in Southern California in a region called the Inland Empire, and it is far away from the coast. I live closer to deserts and mountains. And so, of course, where I live really influences what I write, especially in books like My Papi Has A Motorcycle, which is specific to where I grew up, Corona, California, where my parents met when they migrated from Mexico here to the US in the late 70s. And growing up in that area really has taught me so much about resilience, about what it means to be part of a community, and what it means to appreciate your home. And so all of those things really, I feel, come through in the work that I do. And storytelling in particular wasn't something that I necessarily learned in school, which I did. But coming from an immigrant family, from a Mexican family where oral storytelling is so important and something I think we sometimes take for granted, stories that our abuelitos tell us, our tias and tios, our cousins, people around us that tell us, that help us understand and navigate the world around us, that help us navigate schools or difficult moments. Those are really tools that I learned from home, from sitting at the table, eavesdropping, listening to the chisme with my mom and her friends as a kid, them, drinking their cafecito con pan, and then me just sitting there and listening to stories about migration, about what it meant to leave their home, about what it meant to be married or meant to be a kid back in Mexico or in this country. And so all of those stories are things that I want and I do incorporate into my writing because I feel that our histories are so important and so significant that I want to record them in my work and make sure that everyone knows we were here and these are our stories. And all of those things I learned, I feel that I started learning from my home and the people around me.
Wow, Isabel, thank you so much for that context. So Zeke, you are a Chicano storyteller, cartoonist, and an award-winning illustrator from El Paso, Texas. Work often addresses universal themes of identity, ecology, and social justice. Could you tell us about your journey as an artist and what inspires you when illustrating children's books?
Yeah, thank you so much for the space to be here. I'm also excited and also just enjoying hearing Isabel speak about her. I'm learning something from her every time we're meeting. And so thank you for the space. So for me, coming from where I come from, equally, while it's a very different place from Corona, California, it's like we have a lot of things in similar, right? Culturally, in terms of the proximity to the border and growing up in that space around those communities and culture is something that shapes who I am as a person. It shapes who I am as a visual storyteller. It's really something that I think has an effect. For example, for this book, My Papi Has a Motorcycle, is something that I drew on my experience growing up in the desert to make decisions on things like the color. What kind of colors do I want to use for this book? And what is something that's going to resonate for me? And so I think my trajectory of becoming an illustrator and a visual storyteller was a very winding path. I did not take a straight path. I didn't go to school for this. And so I'm always wanting to share that, right? I'm always wanting to share that experience of trying different things, trying different mediums. I always encourage that to everyone who I speak to. Write, draw, dance. I mean, involve yourself in a lot of different mediums that have to do with you thinking critically, thinking internally, introspectively, poetically, all of these things. And then knowing where I come from. I mean, that's constant in my work is trying to better understand my place, because where I come from is such a fluid place, right? And the border is fluid as the river that demarks it, that marks the line. A lot of my history and my personal story is shaped by that, but isn't always present in school books, in history books. And so for me, my work is first and foremost about me being able to understand my place better, but also making images and using visual storytelling that other folks and young readers, specifically with children's books, can kind of get something from that, and hopefully it resonates.
Zeke, wow, thank you so much. And so impressive that, you mentioned that you're not, I guess, in many ways formally trained in this space, but through your process of experimentation, certainly hard work, and leaning into things that are important to you, of value to you, has manifested into this beautiful career as an artist and storyteller. And I imagine will certainly be of interest and inspirational to kids watching the program. Isabel, My Papi Has a Motorcycle is a young girl's love letter to her hardworking dad and to the memories of home that she holds close in the midst of change. What inspired you to write this book, and what would you like young readers to take away from this story?
Yeah, so like I mentioned in the author's note at the end of the book, the story has been with me since I was a little kid and since I was riding on the back of my papi's motorcycle. My dad would get home from work. At the time, I think he was working either installing cabinets in new tract homes. He's always worked in construction. And for a time, he worked in building RVs. For me, my parents' work, what they did for a living, was always very close to me, because I sometimes would go with them to work, right? So my dad would sometimes take me to construction sites with him, or my mom would take lunch to my dad, and she would take me and my little brother, and we'd be able to help put knobs on cabinets or little bumpers or whatever. And it was always interesting for me to see how a house was put together and how many people it took to put a house together, right? My dad would get home from work and he would put me on the back of his motorcycle and we'd just ride around, and he would be still in his work clothes and still his work boots. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun. And recently I got the opportunity to interview him for a project that Zeke and I did with Harley Davidson. They have an exhibit of our book up, and I got to interview my dad and ask him directly a question that I had never asked him. Why would you take me out on the back of your motorcycle? Like, why did you start doing that? And he said, because it made you happy and I wanted you to be happy. So that story is like even more meaningful to me now, because it was something that I had. The papi in the book, it's hard for my papi to say the words, I love you. That's not something that he didn't grow up with, but he took me out for rides on motorcycle. He builds my bookshelves. He changes the oil in the car. He does all of these things because he loves me, and these are the way he's able to say it. And so with the book, I really wanted to not only celebrate that relationship, people who work with their hands, right? People who keep our community going, but also the importance of having a community and having community spaces like the tortilleria, which is now gone, right? And celebrating my hometown.
Isabel, could you please read My Papi Has a Motorcycle?
My Papi Has a Motorcycle, written by me, Isabel Quintero, illustrated by Zeke Peña. So the first thing I want to show everyone is the inside, and this inside cover that Zeke did so amazing. And you see a big old circle and a little girl holding a motorcycle with a unicorn on it. That circle, that is my town. That is the town I grew up in. That is Corona, California. And those mountains that you see back there, that's the Cleveland National Forest. It sits next to where I grew up. My papi has a motorcycle. From him, I've learned words like carburetor and cariño, drill and dedication. When I hear his gray truck pull into our driveway, I run outside with both of our helmets. My papi, the carpenter, is covered in sawdust and smells like a hard day at work. His hands are rough from building homes every day, his job since he first arrived in this country. But even though he comes home tired, he always has time for me. When our city is winding down, he takes me for a ride. Today, he's going to show me the new houses he's working on. Papi is careful with my ponytail as he pulls my helmet tight. When he lifts me onto the smooth black seat, his hands don't feel rough. They don't feel tired. They feel like all the love he has trouble saying. Lista? Sí. Papi revs the engine, vroom, and the smell of gasoline hits me as he squeezes the accelerator. Vroom, vroom. Con cuidado, be careful, yells Mommy. The motor rumbles and growls. Agárrate, hold on, says Papi, and then we take off. The shiny blue metal of the motorcycle glows in the sun. The bright orange sun is on its way down, turning our sky blue and purple and gold. We become a spectacular celestial thing soaring on asphalt, a comet. The sawdust falling from Papi's hair and clothes becomes a tail following us. Papi zigzags through the streets. We pass Abuelita's church and Tortilleria La Estrella and stop for stray cats crossing in front of us. Mommy thinks there's too many of them, but I think there's just enough. We pass Joy's Market where Mommy buys my gummy bears. Mr. Garcia, our librarian, is walking out the door and nods at us. We nod back. This is how we always greet each other. Daisy! We roar past murals that tell our history of citrus groves and immigrants who work them, and of the famous road race that took place on Grand Boulevard 100 years ago. Now I know that we're stopping at Don Rudy's Raspados. But as we near the shop, we see that it's empty and out of business. I can tell Papi is disappointed. I imagine the smell of the sweet syrups Don Rudy used to flavor our shaved ice. I won't be the only one who misses him. As we ride on, I feel and hear everyone and everything we pass by. Each sound landing in my ears rebuilds whole neighborhoods inside me. No matter how far I go from this place or how much it changes, this city will always be with me. Mija, we cruise by Abuelito and Abuelita's old yellow house, the one with the lemon tree that grew from the seeds of the lemons Abuelito used to pick not far from here. Mommy says we're going to visit them tomorrow to cut nopales from their garden and eat herby albóndigas in Abuelita's kitchen, where the food always tastes better. Adios, mi reina. Adios. We turn the corner and then the dogs behind the fences go wild. Frankie, the Lopez's Labradoodle, escapes from her yard and runs after us. Mercedes Lopez, the fastest runner in our class, races after her. They're right behind us. Then, just as fast, the dogs barking and Mercedes and Frankie become a soft hush in the distance. We ride towards the new homes, replacing the last of the citrus groves. The painters, drywallers, and floor layers all greet us, but we can barely hear their words amidst the sounds of hammers and air compressors. Trabajando duro, muchachos? A little bit, not too much. In all that noise, my papi's voice touches everything. Around the circle. This is my favorite part. On Grand Boulevard, we lean into the curve of the street. I make believe that we're in one of the races that took place here so long ago. It's our last lap and we have to win. The crowd cheers us on. Daisy, Daisy, Daisy. I feel Papi smile as I squeeze my arms tighter around him. Vamos, Papi, faster, faster. We fly around the circle. There's the school where we practice soccer. There's a post where Mr. Charlie takes our letters. And La Panaderia where Papi buys conchas on Sunday mornings. Room, here it is, all of our beautiful city. My eyes try to catch everything, but the colors of houses blend into one another: red, blue, green, orange, pink. We ride, ride, ride until the blue glow from the motorcycle begins to dim and our comet tail has been left behind on the streets we've traveled. We head home and slowly the engine echoes us back onto our street and then our driveway, our finish line. Mommy and little brother hear the motorcycle and run out to greet us. Mommy waves us in just like a referee. Papi and I can't stop laughing. We had a good ride. Through our laughter, I hear a familiar sound. Honk, honk, raspados. I think about my city and all the changes that it's been through and all the changes that will come. Chicle y fresa, por favor. But I know that here in our little house, there are things that will always stay the same. Mañana we fly again.
Isabel, what a beautiful, beautiful story. In addition to being an author, you are an educator. For the last 23 years, you've worked as a teacher's aide in a school for children with special needs, as an avid tutor, an elementary school librarian, a substitute teacher, and an adjunct professor at several community colleges, as well as a high school English teacher. So you have such a rich background in education. What drives your passion to educate students through storytelling?
For me, education is super important. And I think part of it is because it was really ingrained in me how important education is as a child by two parents who had no formal education. My mom made it to third grade, and my dad is learning to read now in his 60s. So for my life, my dad was illiterate. He's learning now, which for a person who makes their living writing is quite something to kind of grapple with, right? To reconcile. I write books, but my dad can't read them, right? And so now he's learning to read. I think that's part of why education was important for me, but also I love learning. Storytelling, like I said before, is a way to understand the world, right? That is our lives, whether we recognize it as such or not, but we understand everything by stories. Stories someone tells us, stories scientists tell us, stories that politicians tell us, stories that doctors tell us. That is how we move about this world. And so it's really important for young people to not only know how to do a science experiment, right? To hypothesize and create theories, but to also tell the story of the results.
Absolutely, and couldn't agree with you more. And I love your explanation of how stories really connect us all. We understand ourselves through stories, whether it's through our heritage and legacy, and stories allow us to understand others. So Zeke, your illustrations bring readers into Isabel's childhood memories, capturing specific places and moments in time. What drew you to this book?
I think it was a lot of things that drew me to this book. As you can tell from Isabel, everything that Isabel has been talking about, she's writing from a place that's deeply connected to these characters. In fact, they literally are her and her family. As a visual storyteller, to go off of what Isabel is saying, is that because story is the way that we know our world, and story is the way that we document, story is the way that we hand things down through the generations. And as a visual storyteller that often collaborates with authors and community organizations, and there's a lot of community work that I do, and I don't necessarily make a distinction between those two things. I don't make a distinction between a creative practice in the publishing industry and the creative practice that I have working with community. Having that story at the center of it is something that, for me, requires a lot of respect. I think first and foremost, I have to understand the importance of what Isabel is putting down on the paper in the story that she's willing to share with us, right? It's all voluntary, right? Or at least you would hope that like the stories that we're telling are told in a voluntary way. It's not something that I take lightly, right? When folks ask me to illustrate things, to draw things, especially when they're close to their person, when they're close to their family, it's something I'm extremely grateful for. Having that at the center of the story, having that special relationship between the father, between Papi and Daisy Ramona, was something that resonated for me, right? To your point about creating those bridges, the bridge that I crossed when I came to the story was very clearly understanding the very special relationship that I have with my father. While reading this story and considering it, I was already on board.
You've approached this with this mindset of it being sort of sacred. This is a relationship or story that you want to get right, approaching it at its foundation with respect. So in the book, Daisy and her father drive past murals depicting their city's history. Zeke, could you show our viewers how to illustrate their own mural, perhaps weaving in symbols, lettering, and icons from their own communities?
So what I've done is I've done a rough sketch of some lettering of our characters, some mural details, and some background details, okay? Let me quickly show you some things here. I want to show you that I'm only using basic shapes to start with. When you're starting to sketch something out, only use basic shapes. I'm using circles, I'm using squares. These ones are like slanted rectangles, right? But they're blocks, they're just like squares. And then I'm using one triangle here for the motorcycle. Okay, so for our mural, what you need to decide is 3 things for your mural. You need a symbol or an icon. So that's like a really simple drawing, right? Something that someone can really recognize. So maybe your symbol is, maybe in your city, in your community, by where you live in your neighborhood, you have a really awesome pizza place. So you're gonna use a basic shape of a triangle and some circles to have that be a symbol or an icon. Okay, so that's something you need. You wanna have some people in here. You'll see those as I draw them in. I'm using some shapes to draw those in. And then you wanna have some lettering. What kind of lettering are you using? What is the word that's gonna go there? Maybe it's something that's inspirational, or maybe it's the name of your town or the place where this mural is, okay? So those are the 3 things you need. Let's get to drawing here. So I'm gonna start by putting some color down. We're gonna start with the mural background. That's the focus of this first step. I'm using these Color of Kindness colored pencils here. Here's 2 colors for my lemons, and I'm just gonna start to sketch those in. So I'm gonna start with one color, the lighter color, and then I'm gonna come in with just a little bit of a different color to create a little bit of shading here. Some shading on that side, some shading on this side. There's also some small lemons here. I'm gonna draw those in. Okay, give those a little bit of shade. If you don't have two colors that are really close like this, another color that you can shade with would be an orange or a red. That'll give you a little bit of a different color. Now I'm going to think about some of these other elements. I have some more yellow here. So I'm going to draw this crown in. The word that I chose is from my Papi Has A Motorcycle. It's the name of a town, Corona, California. It's Corona, California. This is where Daisy Ramona lives. And Corona in English means crown. I wanted to include that on my mural. This is another idea of a symbol. Okay, now what I need some green for my lemons. Let's use something different here. And notice that I'm drawing in a little bit light. I'm not drawing really, really hard. That's because I'm trying to keep the colors very even. Another little tip here, keep a little scrap sheet of paper on the side. Maybe this color, I want to test it before. And so I can have that scrap sheet of paper over here to the side. So let's draw these leaves in here. Probably have some leaves up here coming from the tree. Now I'm going to draw in some color here for the skin tone of these 2 people. This is very similar to the mural that you'll find in the book. These are farm workers. These are people who pick the food that we eat. In Daisy Ramona's neighborhood, they have a really nice mural of some of the farm workers that are responsible for taking care of the food that we eat. Notice that I'm drawing in very lightly. Notice that I'm holding the pencil really far back. That'll help you draw a little bit lighter. I'm not holding it really close like this. Try it out. Try it this way. Maybe for the shirt, I think I'm going to switch to markers. Okay, so I've got that color filled in there. I need a color for the hat. I think I want the hat to be a little bit darker. So I'm gonna use this brown. Maybe you want a brighter colored hat. Maybe you want like a pink hat or a purple hat. You can decide to do that. I need a color for the hair. It's gonna be darker hair. I need to draw this box in here. That's the carton it's holding. So notice I'm not too concerned about the super small details, whether it's fitting in the line of the hand. I'm just getting the color down. Okay, now I need a really cool color for down here for the lettering. I'll use this color right here. Sandy tan. Color this in with marker. This is called bubble lettering, something that's used a lot in graffiti. Also in sign painting, you can look up some lettering in sign painting if you want to try to find some reference for your lettering. And as far as the word goes, what you're wanting to write, again, it can be the name of your town, maybe it's a racial word, maybe it's something that describes something on the mural, maybe it's someone's name. You can make a mural for someone, like your mom or your dad or one of your friends. I like this color a lot, so I'm gonna go ahead and use it up here too in the crown. I think it'll be a good color for the crown. I think I need a few different colors here for the background. I'm gonna use a little bit more of this watercolor. A little bit of water. A little extra water on there, so I'm just gonna dab that. Now I need to start defining things a little bit more, so I'm gonna go ahead and go into my line now that I have some color down. So for my line, you need to use a darker color. I think for this, I'm gonna save this black color and I'm actually gonna use a dark red or a dark purple just for the mural. And what that'll do is it'll look pretty nice with some of these browns that I have going here. So I'm gonna go in here and draw this. What I'm doing is kind of outlining. I want to start to make things look a little more clear. I think I'm going to save this purple color just for the people. Okay, for the lemons, I'm going to switch to a green. I'm going to start using a smaller pen too, just for some smaller details. Okay, these are the take note Crayolas. Just doing a little bit of line work. I'm defining some of these smaller details in here. So what this is called a color fill. I put the color down first, right? The color fill, and now I'm going in and doing some line work, creating some shadows. So notice that I'm using this little darker orange, right? It adds some shadow to the lemons. Now let's get some lettering here. Let's go in and do some lettering. I want there to be a really strong contrast with the lettering. So I think, actually, I'll go ahead and use this. I think this will look nice here. Now I plan to have a little bit of smoke here later on, so you're gonna notice that I'm gonna leave some of these letters not complete, okay? And that's why it's good to have the sketch, right? I know that I'm gonna have another scene right here, another set of characters. So I want to make sure to leave space for that. And I also want to think about that when I'm selecting the colors. The little dark area that I'm adding is called a drop shadow. It's just to make the letters look a little bit more interesting. Okay, so I'm going to leave the lettering right there for now. Oh, actually, let me do my crown because I do know that's going to go there. I'm going to use red. Okay, so that's starting to look pretty good. I think I need some darker colors in here. As you change colors in the composition in your mural, sometimes you need to just make some changes. So I'm gonna go ahead and go in there with some stronger colors. Just go right over that, okay? So also as I'm selecting these colors, I'm trying to remember that I'm gonna have, again, that scene there in front of Daisy, Ramona, and Papi. And so I'm trying to plan ahead a little bit, and I'm trying to make sure that I don't use any colors in the mural that I'm going to use down here for this other element of this illustration. So let's go ahead and start to fill in this background, and then we can move on to this other element. So I'm going to outline our building here. Murals almost always go on buildings, but sometimes they can go in other places. They can go indoor, they can go outdoor. This one's outdoor, it's outside. So we have some buildings back here. Maybe there is a little billboard back here because this is a cityscape. I'm using silhouette for this background here. Silhouette is when something has a shadow like this and it's all the way filled in. It can be a quick way to add details in the background, but so that you also don't have to draw every little small thing. Okay, it's a little trick there. There are a lot of palm trees, Southern California, especially in Corona. Notice that I'm just doing the background all in one color. That's because it's pushed back, it's in the background. It's not quite as important as the stuff that's in front. So I am just using one color in the background. Okay, so there's our background. Maybe there's a building next door over here. We're not gonna worry too much about it, but I will add just some small details there. I'm gonna leave this here for now. You can go ahead and fill in the background. So you can go ahead and fill that kind of stuff in, just in there. Maybe you wanna add some more details. Maybe you really wanna get into super small details in here. And maybe you wanna do some more shading. You can go in and go do shading, add some lines in there. There's lots of stuff that you can do here, but I'm going to move on so that you have the basics of that. You can finish yours out. Remember, lettering, a symbol or an icon for the place that the mural is in, and then people or animals. Okay.
Now, another thing we notice in the story is Daisy loves spending time with her Papi on his motorcycle, zooming around town. Now that you've drawn the mural, can you demonstrate how to draw Daisy and her father on his motorcycle?
After you filled that in, we know roughly what's going on in the background. Now we can focus on what's called the focal point, okay? The focal point, every illustration, there's a focal point. There should be one thing that really stands out, something that just pops off the page. And in my Papi Has A Motorcycle, I almost always want that to be Daisy Ramona and Papi and the motorcycle. So for that, I use the little trick, okay? And so throughout the book, there is only one place that you will find the color pink, and that is on Daisy Ramona's helmet. This is one of my focal points. And just as a little reminder, if you need to go back to remember what shapes I used for this, it is a triangle, 2 circles for the motorcycle, and then circles for the helmet, circles, a lot of circles and ovals for Daisy's body. And then for Papi, I used squares. The blue motorcycle, right, that Papi rides turns into a comet. I always love that line in the book. So we're gonna have that blue motorcycle here. The handlebars that Papi's holding. This is the headlight. I'm drawing the color that's inside the line. What I'm gonna then do after this is I'm gonna go over this and do the line work. So I'm going to create the actual line that is a little bit more detailed for what's right there, okay? So I just want you to see that little bit. Another way to do it, if you prefer to do it this way, is to draw the line first and then color in. That's one way to do it, okay? I'm gonna do some lines here because they're going super fast. If something's moving fast, draw it fast. And that means that your line will be really quick. It'll be really shaky and movie. And so that'll also let the reader know that that object is moving fast. You see I got the wheels in there. Let's get Daisy Ramona drawn in here. And we'll draw the rest of the motorcycle. There's a little thunderbolt on the motorcycle, but maybe you want to design
something different for your motorcycle. Maybe your motorcycle is red, right? And it has a star on it. Or maybe your motorcycle is black. It can be any color that you want. Okay, so now that I've done the line work, now I'm gonna fill it in with some color. I want some smoke here. Remember I mentioned saving some space for the smoke. Use that for Papi's pants. We'll use a little bit lighter for Daisy Ramona's. And there's Daisy Ramona and Papi.
Wow, thank you, Zeke, so much for those insights. And thank you for reminding our young artists and viewers that it is so important to experiment when using a variety of tools. And thank you for showing us the foundational building blocks of creating the drawing. All such great wisdom and insight, and for reminding us also that practice makes progress. Now that you've seen some of Zeke's wonderful illustrations, it is your time to draw. Grab some colored pencils, crayons, or markers, and paper. Think of who will ride the motorcycle you draw, Daisy and her father, or yourself. Or maybe you'll choose to create a mural art showcasing images from your community. After this session, artists of all ages will have plenty of time to finish creating art. Parents and teachers, when the young artist finishes their work, it will be great for you to ask them to explain some of their favorite memories while spending time with family and friends. Then post a photo in the comment sections of this video. We can't wait to see what they create. You can also be first to know about free learning events like this one by signing up to receive the Crayola Education monthly e-newsletter. Colorful resources will be delivered right to your email box. Isabel, our viewers are so inspired by the story you shared today. What last bit of advice do you have for our young authors who are seeking to share their own stories?
Listen, right? Listen to the stories around you. Listen to how people talk, to how people tell stories. Read a lot. Like Zeke, I have minimal formal training in creative writing. I learned what I know about story from reading. So reading is so important. Read, and ask yourself, how is this story put together? How is this writer describing a house, describing a room, describing a person? What are they doing to move from one event to the next event? Remember that your story, that sometimes we think, no one's going to think my story is important. No one's going to want to read this. But your story is important. I wasn't sure if anyone wanted to read My Papi Has a Motorcycle, right? I believed in the story. There were moments that I was like, I don't know, but I believed that this story was important to me. It was a story about me and my dad, and I wanted to tell it. And I felt like maybe there were the few kids out there who could relate to it. And then they did, right? Then kids did relate to it. And eventually it became a book. And so I want you to make sure that you believe in your story, in your voice, because maybe it won't be important to everybody, but it will be important to some people. And that's what matters. You connecting with others who share your story, right? Or who want to share and enjoy your stories. And write. And you don't have to wait until you're an adult to write a story. You can write a story when you're a kid. I started writing stories when I was a kid. What I'm trying to say is just write it. Write your story. It doesn't matter what it's about. It doesn't matter if you're famous or not famous. It doesn't matter if you're young or old. If you want to write a story, you write that story, and don't let anybody tell you that it's not worth telling.
Thank you, Isabel, for that advice. And Zeke, your illustrations capture the warmth and love from Isabel's childhood memories. What additional tips would you like to share with young artists who dream of capturing stories and memories through their art?
I think I'll echo what Isabel says. I always like to encourage people, every story is important because your story is important to the people that are around you. And that's really what matters. For myself, when I make work with my mom in mind, with my nieces and nephews in mind, with my community in mind, with my friends. And so when I'm writing or drawing something, I'm writing to them and I'm drawing to them, right? I'm making the images so that they'll understand them first and foremost. I hope that more people understand, but I think it's important to know that place where you come from. And in the same way, paying attention is really important to drawing. You have to be able to see things before you can draw them. If you can close your eyes and you can draw something in your mind and visualize it first, it makes it a lot easier to draw it when you put the pen to the paper. The other thing that I'll say is don't ever say that you're a bad drawer or a bad artist or you don't know how to draw. That's the most common thing that I hear from people is that, oh, I don't know how to draw. I don't draw. Most of us write, right? We pick up a pen and we can write, and writing is drawing, right? And so everyone draws. It's just that some people practice more than others. So if you're serious about drawing and you're serious about being an artist, you want to make comics or manga or cartoons or concept art for video games or concept art for films, all of that requires practice. So try to draw one thing every day and try to finish that one drawing every day.
Thank you, Zeke. Thank you, Isabel, for inspiring us today. We also want to thank our friends at Penguin Kids and Penguin Classroom for publishing this great book. And we want to share a special thanks to all of you for joining us for this session. Small moments with loved ones can have a lifelong impact, so make memories often.
Bye. Thank you for joining us today, and make sure you're writing those stories.
Thank you everyone for spending some time with us, and thank you so much to Crayola for this space and for this awesome opportunity to draw and tell our story. We hope that it's an inspiration to you and your family. So take care. Peace.
Goodbye, friends.